Hey everyone, welcome back to the Throwing Partners podcast. It's Kirby, Joe, and Nate here coming to you on a Sunday night. We are discussing our Hall of Fame ballots tonight. Joe and Nathan, we are going to go ahead and start out by going over who we believe are the locks for this year, and then who we believe may be Hall of Famers down the road, but not necessarily this year. So let's get started.
Drive into left. At the wall. It's gone. Tie game.
The first lock that we have kind of talked about prior to this is Ichiro. Ichiro collected 3,089 hits over his career. He collected 10 gold gloves. He had a 311 career batting average, 10 straight seasons with 200 hits. He set the hits record in a season with 262. He should actually have 2 MVPs instead of 1 because he should have won in 2004 as well instead of not in addition to 2001. And he collected 60.0 B WAR. We all agreed that we thought that this was a lock for the Hall of Fame. But also too, there is talk that Ichiro may be unanimous. I will say this: one thing that helps Ichiro's case is Ichiro is well loved throughout the baseball community, and he represents the Hall of Fame in the best ways possible. I loved Ichiro growing up as a kid. I thought he was so talented at everything that he did, whether it was base running, playing right field, being a contact hitter, getting himself on base, not striking out, taking his walks when he needed to. He just did everything well, and I do think that he is a Hall of Famer. The new era statistics don't really favor him that much because he wasn't really a power hitter. But Ichiro is our very first person on this list that we all believe is a lock. Gentlemen, do we have any objections to Ichiro being in the Hall of Fame?
No, I mean, I think, it's kind of interesting that you said that he wasn't a power hitter because I've actually heard a lot of stories about Ichiro from some of his teammates saying that he was a contact first hitter because he was so selfless at the plate, but that he could park a ball in the upper deck of Yankee Stadium any at bat that he wanted to.
Yep.
But he always just had the mentality of trying to get on base, trying to get a slap base hit, no matter what. And then if the moment really called for it, launching an absolute tank. So I think it's interesting that you labeled him as not a power hitter because I mean his stats do reflect that, but a lot of his teammates believed that he was just kind of concealing that power to focus more on getting slap base hits. So I just think that that's pretty interesting.
Definitely. And I was looking at some other candidates before we got started today, and there was some of them that were really on the bubble because I was looking at them and I'm thinking, what does this guy do well, or what did they do well during their career? Well, Ichiro did several things extremely well. He played great defense. He ran the bases extremely well. He made great contact. He always hit for a high average. So there's 4 things right there that Ichiro actually did exceptionally well, if not the best in the game for his time. I can't say that about a lot of other guys on this ballot. So I think Ichiro was for sure a Hall of Famer. Nathan, do you have any objection?
No, I think he's definitely in. I mean, Ichiro. Looking at this list, Ichiro is the most qualified out of all of them. I'd say he's probably the most qualified out of most Hall of Fame ballots that we've seen in the last 20 years, maybe.
Definitely.
Obviously, without Jeter, without Griffey, without Mariano, he's certainly up there with those guys, as should be unanimous and hopefully will be. He's the hits leader, I think, all time professionally. I think they counted his hits from the MVP and the MLB as all-time hits leader.
And this is after he didn't come to the bigs until age 27 too.
Exactly.
So you figure
God only knows what he would have done before. Yeah.
If this guy would have come over at age 23, 24, he probably has close to 4,000 hits professional in MLB.
Oh yeah.
Which would have been just awesome to see. I would have loved to have seen Ichiro in the bigs here at like 23, 24.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that I also think that we probably would have seen a little bit more power out of him,
Yeah,
earlier in his career. But I think he really toned it down, in the later stages. But yeah, I
definitely.
agree.
Our second lock that we agreed for this year was actually going to be Carlos Beltran. Now, there is some controversy with Carlos Beltran after the Astros cheating scandal in 2017. And there have been talks that he was the mastermind behind the stuff with the trash cans. But let me just read you some of Carlos Beltran's stats real quick. First of all, he collected 70.1 B WAR. That's eighth all time for a center fielder. He had 435 home runs along with 312 stolen bases. He is also ninth on the all-time power speed leaderboard for a position player, which is very impressive. That list is, there's Bonds, there's Mays, and Beltran is also in there as a top 10 player. If you were lucky enough to watch Carlos Beltran play, this dude could do it all. Clearly, he could hit for power, he could hit for average, he could run the bases well. He played elite center field defense. Once again, just like Ichiro, not only did he do one thing great, he did like 4 or 5 things great. He also hit at the top of the order. Nowadays, he would probably hit leadoff. He would be a very much like a Ronald Acuna Jr. type, where he hit for power, ran well, and played elite defense. So I believe that Carlos Beltran should be a lock. I don't know what you guys think, but I truly believe that. Let's hear it from you.
Well, I find it kind of interesting that as it stands right now, of the ballots that we currently know, which is 44.6% of the ballots as of 119, he is on 80.6% of the known ballots, which I find very interesting because he was part of both the steroid era and the sign stealing scandal. And I remember hearing rumors that we didn't know if Carlos Beltran used. So the fact that he's not being like held, that's not being held against him, is quite interesting. And I also think the fact that and I understand that it was later in his career, it was literally his last season in MLB, that the sign stealing scandal hasn't affected people's ability to vote for him on the Hall of Fame ballot. I find that very interesting because I hear a lot of people think that when it comes time for Jose Altuve specifically, that because he was a part of the 2017 Astros, there's no way he can get in. And all I've got to say to that is baseball has a very long history, and it has a very long history of players that cheated to win or to attempt to win. Other than like the Black Sox, they cheated to lose and gambling bet. But other than that, I mean, in baseball, you try to gain every advantage you can possible because it is just that hard of a sport. And it's just, again, very interesting to me that the writers have not held the sign stealing scandal against him, considering that he was the mastermind of the entire scheme, him and Alex Cora. So, I don't disagree that him in the overarching of his career as a Hall of Famer, but I find that interesting that they are not holding that against him. While someone like Jose Altuve, that happened in the middle of his prime, and people have considered holding that against him when it comes time for him to be on the Hall of Fame ballot, even though he advocated against it. So again, very interesting. And I think that this actually helps Altuve's case when
Definitely.
it does come time for him. So
Definitely. Nathan, what are your thoughts on Carlos Beltran?
Yeah, I mean, certainly he should be in here. I mean, if you look at his offensive stats, just purely looking at him, he's got 2,700 hits. He's got 435 home runs. He's got a 70 career WAR. I mean, that in itself is, I would say, pretty close to being a Hall of Famer. You take his position into account; he's a center fielder, and there's one Hall of Famer right now that is pretty close in resume to him. I mean, Andre Dawson. Like, they have very similar stats. I mean, granted, Dawson won an MVP and a whole shit ton more Gold Gloves, but Dawson's in the Hall of Fame. I think Beltran should be there.
Definitely.
And if I'm gonna give a little bias to it, I think Beltran should be there above him because Beltran was hitting both sides of the plate.
Definitely.
And as we know, it's difficult to excel at one side of the plate. If you're excelling like that on both sides of the plate for the entirety of a career, man, I don't see why he shouldn't be in there. So
I agree. Our third lock that we agreed on before we hopped on tonight was actually Billy Wagner, another former Astro. Let me read off some stats about Billy Wagner real quick because these actually jump off the page to me. And why this guy is now on what, year 8 or 9? Or no, this is his 10th year on the ballot. This is the last year on the ballot.
Yes, this is his last year of eligibility.
And this should have never made it this far. He's got a 2.31 career ERA, which is better than Trevor Hoffman, who I believe was a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's got a 1.87 career ERA plus, better than Trevor Hoffman. His K per 9 for his career is 11.9. That's better than Trevor Hoffman and Mo. He's got a 27.7 B WAR, which is only 0.3 behind, guess who? Trevor Hoffman. And that's also in 187 less innings. For those of you who don't know, that's about 3 seasons worth of innings for a reliever if they're throwing about 60 innings. So to be 0.3 behind in 187 less innings is very impressive. He's also got more strikeouts than both of them with 1,196. That's in just over 900 innings. I was actually lucky enough to watch Billy Wagner pitch, and when we want to talk about dominance and straight up, like, Billy comes in on the ninth, the game's over. There's no questions asked. He may walk a guy, but guess what? He's going to K2 and he's going to get one to pop up. And that's how the ball game's going to end, and that's going to be it. Billy Wagner threw hard. He was left-handed. He was shorter. This guy was everything that you wanted in a closer. He didn't give up a ton of home runs. He was always K'ing guys up. And dude, he was exactly what I think of when I think of a closer. You know, Mo gets a lot of love, but Mo was a bat breaker. You know, he would throw the cutter in, and then all of a sudden you're breaking a bat and you're going to ground out. But Billy was a different kind of dominance. Billy was today's type dominance 20 years ago. There's no reason for him to be in the last year of eligibility on the ballot. He should have already been a Hall of Famer. Joe, Nathan, let me hear your thoughts on Billy Wagner.
Well, I mean, I have to agree with you, especially with that assessment of Trevor Hoffman. I think it's ridiculous that it's taken Billy Wagner this long to get on, to get into the Hall of Fame. Right now, as it currently stands, with the known ballots, he is reporting in at 85.1%. So he's almost a guaranteed lock to get that over. I believe it's 76% of the vote. So he's pretty much a lock at this point, but again, very ridiculous that he is not, unanimous at this point, especially since Trevor Hoffman has been put in the Hall of Fame, and again, very similar, not counting stats, but advanced stats as Trevor Hoffman, and I mean, he was a little bit before my time. Obviously, he pitched 5 years before I was even born. So that kind of ages me right there. But the ERA plus kind of speaks for itself. I mean, in 16 years, he had a 187 ERA plus. I mean, that just screams dominance to me. It's really great to see another Astro go into the Hall of Fame because I'm 90% sure he will be going in as an Astro, even though I do know that his best years were near the tail end of his career where he wore different hats, but for the longevity of his career, he was with the Astros. And I believe that that's the cap that he should wear. I know that that's not up to him. That's up to a different set of people that decide that, but I think he's an Astro in the Hall of Fame, so it's good to see another fellow Astro be in it.
Nathan, you're going to like what I'm going to share with you right here. So for those of you who would like to understand what kind of dominance Billy Wagner had for his career, look at Scooble's stats from last year. I told you guys that Billy Wagner's career ERA was 2.31. Well, Scooble had a 2.39. as far as dominance on the mound with the K's, I told you guys that Billy Wagner had 11.9 Ks per nine. Well, Skubal had 10.7. We said that his ERA plus was 187 for his career. Skubal's was 170. That tells you everything you need to know. And Skubal won a Cy last year. And Skubal was, depending on what list you look at for a starter. Now, granted, this is starter reliever; it's a little bit different. But when you're looking at lists for next year of who they think the best starter in the league is, Skubal is a top 3 in every single person's list that I can see. It's Skeens, it's Skubal, it's Wheeler. In some kind of order like that. So just to kind of help you out with what Billy Wagner's dominance looked like, I thought that was a very fair comp. Also, being left-handed and throwing 100 miles an hour helps. So, Nathan, I don't know what you think about Billy Wagner, but I thought that was a really, really nice comp.
I think it's absolutely ridiculous that we're on his last year of eligibility and he's finally just getting across the mark. Because like you said, look through his career, his strikeouts per nine. There's only been one season in his career where it's been under 10 Ks per nine.
Wild.
It's ridiculous. His whip for his career is under 1, and he's got over 400 saves. He's what, number 8 on the saves list, and I mean all these guys above him, Mariano and Hoffman, these guys have at least 200 more innings pitched than him. So if he would have had the same amount of innings, God only knows, he might even be up there. So it's just insane that we're having this discussion that he's just now going to get in last second. It's right. He should have been in a long time ago. I agree. Yeah. He should also be wearing an Astros hat.
Yeah, I will say I've read some things about his career and kind of why I believe baseball writers haven't felt like the urgency to put him in, and I think it has to do a lot with the fact that he doesn't have a career signature moment. I mean, he doesn't have that just like one play that sticks in your mind. And the postseason numbers don't help him because he did not pitch well in the postseason throughout his career. But it also has to do with the fact that his teams just weren't always that good. I mean, he was on the mid 2000s Astros, and those were some not great teams. Although the 2004 and 2005 Astros, went to the NLCS and then the World Series. So in 2005, but I mean, he just didn't have that moment. So actually, he wasn't on either of those Astros teams. So that doesn't help. But my point still stands. He was on those kind of lackluster Astros teams, and he just didn't have that career-defining moment that a lot of these other pitchers have.
Definitely. Now, let's move on, gentlemen, to somebody who will probably be a lock for the Hall of Fame. But there's really only one reason this person is going to be a lock, and that's because of his strikeouts. CC Sabathia. CC Sabathia has 251 wins and 3,093 strikeouts. If you watch CC Sabathia, dude was an absolute workhorse. But his overall numbers are really not eye-popping. He's got a career 3.74 ERA. He's got a career 1.16 ERA plus, a 3.78 FIP, a strikeouts per nine of 7.8. There's just nothing here that really jumps off the page. Now, if you go and look at his 2008 season where he was, he started on the Indians and then went to Milwaukee, that is what stands out in his career. That season was pure dominance. He had 10 complete games. He was the man that year. But look, when you just look at his stats on the surface, the only thing that's different between him and Mark Burley is the fact that CC has 3,000 strikeouts and Burley has 1,800. That's it. Otherwise, they're the same pitcher. But one of these guys will probably not be a Hall of Famer ever, being Burley, and one of these guys is probably getting in this year. Joe, what are your thoughts on CC Sabathia being a first ballot Hall of Famer? Because besides the strikeouts, I don't know that I agree with it.
Yeah, I mean, I got to agree. I don't agree that he is he should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. I mean, we're making Billy Wagner wait 10 years, and he has an ERA plus of 187, and we're letting CC Sabathia with an ERA plus career wise at 117. I mean, that kind of screams like ridiculous to me if I'm not if I'm being honest. Um, you know, he had, or sorry, no, that wasn't Sabathia. That was wrong. That at 116, Sabathia had a 116. Felix Hernandez had a career 117, and we're not talking about him being a first ballot Hall of Famer right now. So I just think that that's pretty that's pretty a glaring difference. And Felix Hernandez threw a perfect game. I mean that that should almost. I'm not saying that one thing should make you a lock, but that's pretty hard to do. A perfect game. I mean, that's one of the most rare things in baseball is throwing a perfect game. So CC Sabathia, I wouldn't put him on my ballot. He's Hall of Very Good, and I also believe that Felix Hernandez is Hall of Very Good, which is why I don't have him on my ballot. But I think it's literally just New York bias because he spent so much time in New York. I really think that that's what's happening here. Is he's got writer's bias, and that's just kind of absurd to me because again, we made Billy Wagner wait 10 years and we're letting CC Sabathia get in his first year of eligibility.
Nathan, what are your thoughts on CC, especially being an AL Central guy?
Listen, man, being a Tigers fan, I only really remember him when we were prancing heads with them in the playoffs as a Yankee. But I mean, this guy is like he is Hall of Very Good. He's the MLB The Show legend, MLB 2K legend. Like he's good. Everybody loved to use him. I mean, he's a big dude throwing gas on the mound. And to be frank, he hit the strikeout mark because he played 19 years in the game. Like if he would have had a career of a similar guy, like I don't know, 5 years shorter, like we're not even looking at him in the Hall of Fame. Like he's not even on this ballot. Let's be honest. He's good. Nobody's taking that away from him. He had some really great years. Going to Milwaukee was probably the best part of his career, at least so far. But I don't know. Should he really be here? Probably not.
So CC Sabathia in 19 years had 3,093 strikeouts. Yep. Felix Hernandez in 15 years had 2,524 strikeouts. I mean, and we're not like Felix Hernandez is currently reporting at 24.6% of the votes on 44% of the known ballots. If you just adjust CC's career to compare it to Felix's, I mean, I don't understand what the gap is here. Again, Felix Hernandez threw a perfect game, which again shouldn't be an automatic guarantee to be in the Hall of Fame. But the numbers are pretty similar overall. I mean, again, they are separated by 1 point on ERA plus through their careers. So I don't understand. Again, I'm thinking it's kind of this New York bias. Like maybe like Felix Hernandez played in Seattle.
I think you're nailing it on the head right there. It's got to be the New York bias. Like they won the 2009 World Series. He's the ALCS MVP. It's the New York bias. It has to be. It's got to be part of it.
It just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, that's all I'm going to say.
Yes, and also, too, he is one of those people that is in the very much good graces of Major League Baseball. He is well-loved, and that's a big part. The writers love the part of the Hall of Fame ballot that includes the character clause. And they love CC for that. He is a good guy, and they like that. And I feel like that's obviously why guys like Kirk Schilling are not in the Hall of Fame. Schilling is much more deserving than CC, but the character clause gets Schilling every single time. Now, granted, one day I think that Schilling will get in, but when you make certain comments about this or that, then you're probably not getting in. Uh,
Yeah. So hold on. I just want to
Go
go
ahead.
down the ERA plus. We already know that's 116 for CC, 117 Felix Hernandez, and then we go to FIP. CC had a 3.78 FIP. Felix Hernandez had a career 3.52 WHIP. CC Sabathia had a career hits per 9 at 8.6. Felix Hernandez had a career hits per 9 at 8.2. Felix Hernandez had a career homers per 9 at 0.9. CC Sabathia had a home run per 9 at 1.0. The walks per 9 for CC are 2.8. The walks per 9 for Felix is 2.7. The strikeouts per 9 for Felix is 8.3, and the strikeouts per 9 for CC is 7.8. So again, what are we doing here? Why? Like, it's so clearly New York bias. The numbers are so similar, and people might argue that okay, CC pitched 4 years longer than Felix, so those last 4 years could have hurt CC's overall numbers. But still, I mean, it frustrates the living daylight out of me because there is no consistency when it comes to how we evaluate these players. And again, I think both are very deserving of having a conversation. But again, I think both are in the Hall of Very Good. I don't think either pitcher is in the Hall of Fame. I don't. But I don't. If we're gonna put CC in, then we have to put Felix in. There is no argument against that. You cannot make an argument. You just can't.
It's interesting, Joe, that you have brought up Felix, because the one guy that really stands out to me that it actually had a better peak than both of them and was kicked off the Hall of Fame ballot even very soon was Johan Santana. Johan Santana is a two-time Cy Young winner. He had a career 3.20 ERA. He had just under 2,000 strikeouts. He had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He had 5 straight seasons with a B WAR above 5. 4 of them, he had a B WAR above 7. His peak was very high, very short, and he basically blew out his arm. And he was off the ballot, I believe, in 1 or 2 years. Johan Santana, I would take over Felix and CC. Every day of the week and twice on Sunday, and he was off the ballot sooner than CC will. I think Johan is one of those guys that will get another look down the road. But if you ever watch the three of them pitch, I would take Santana all day. Not one time did CC Sabathia have a 7 B WAR season. Johan Santana had 4 of them. Not to mention 1, 2, 3 more seasons with the B WAR above 4. I think with pitchers, what's really going to have to happen, especially since we're not seeing the guys that throw, that start 35 games a year, they're not throwing 200 innings. We're not going to see many compiling stats anymore. We're not going to see 300 wins unless Verlander somehow gets the elixir of life and these 1-year deals that he manages to get 8 wins a year for the next 4 years with. There's only 19 guys right now that have 3,000 strikeouts, and nobody's giving freaking Zach Greinke a job so he can get 21 more of them. Why the Marlins or why this or that team like the Rockies haven't freaking called him to put butts in seats is beyond me. Give the guy a freaking 1-at-1 deal and let him get to 3,000 strikeouts, because we're not going to see these guys ever again. Our best hope right now is in Garrett Cole or Chris Sale to stay healthy, but that's hard. Guys are just not doing that anymore, and we're going to have to reevaluate how we look at pitchers. Felix, objectively, was a much better peak pitcher than CC ever was. Hands down. And in that era, guess who I would have taken? I would have taken Felix 100% over CC. No questions asked. Felix was that much better. But he played for the Mariners, which is why he doesn't get the love like CC does.
And I think, the lack of postseason experience because I mean Felix Hernandez had 0 postseason games played because he played on the Mariners, but that should not be held against him. Just because CC actually did get postseason time because he was on better teams does not mean that you should automatically discount Felix Hernandez because again, the big sample size is very comparable for both players. So again, it just does not make sense to me. And CC Sabathia was a 4.28 ERA pitcher in the postseason. Are we really gonna like say that he was the most dominant pitcher, like the most deserving pitcher because of his postseason stats? Doesn't make sense to me. There's no consistency. There never has been. It is so frustrating.
Definitely. Okay, moving on from CC because I think we've all said our piece about how we feel. The next one that is not a lock but has consistently moved up over the past few years is Andrew Jones. Being the resident. Sorry, everyone. I haven't. This winter storm blowing in, it's killing my allergies. Being the resident Braves fan here, Andrew Jones, as told by Willie Mays, is the greatest defensive center fielder of all time. If Willie Mays is telling you that, you are that guy. He also had 7 seasons with 30 home runs playing center field. He's got 10 straight Gold Gloves. He had 434 career home runs. He also has the most D-WAR for a center fielder ever with 24.4. He's 14th all time in center fielder WAR. And for those of you who all agreed with us that Ichiro is a first ballot Hall of Famer and probably unanimous Hall of Famer, Andrew Jones has more B-WAR than Ichiro. Andrew Jones has a 62.7 B-WAR. Ichiro has 60 B-WAR. Now, also with that being said, Andrew Jones played in a hell of a lot less games than Ichiro did. I think Andrew Jones, let's see. Andrew Jones played in how many games?
2196.
Yeah, and Ichiro played in how many games? 2653.
A lot more.
So we're talking about almost a 450 game difference. If you give Andrew Jones 450 more games healthy, he's got 500 home runs. He's probably got another Gold Glove or two. He's probably got close to 70 WAR. And that right there, what territory does that put you in? That's Beltran territory or better. So for me, he has been a bubble guy for the longest time. Andrew's problem, a lot of it, is the fact that he is relying on a lot of new era stats when it comes to WAR. Also, his peak in his career basically ended at age 30. He came up at age 19, and his career was basically over at age 30. I hated that for him because I would have loved to have seen him at least be really solid until like age 33, because I think we wouldn't even be having this conversation right now. But a lot of people look at the fact that his career was basically over at 30, and they really knock him on that. Even though his prime, it was almost immediate as soon as he came into the bigs. I don't know how you guys feel about Andrew Jones. This is his 8th year on the ballot. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes. Last year he got 61.6% of the ballot. I'm not sure what it looks like from Mr. Tibbs. Do you know what it looks like right now, Joe? I don't know if you have that pulled up.
I had it pulled up and then okay, so he is tracking in right now at 72.6%.
Yeah, that's not
so
good.
Just a few points under the threshold.
Definitely.
Yeah, again, just I mean, you threw out some great numbers comparing him to both Ichiro and Beltran, and both are pretty much a lock to go into the Hall of Fame on their first year of the ballot. I don't understand why it takes them so long to figure out these players are Hall of Fame worthy. Nothing changes between the what is it, like 5 years after they play to the 10 that it takes for them to get in. Nothing changes. They cannot add to the stats. So what in their mind changes? I don't get it. Yes, of course, Andrew Jones should be a Hall of Famer. Who the hell shouldn't be when you win 10 straight Gold Gloves? That means for 10 years in the National League, he was the best player at his position defensively. Are we just throwing defensive metrics out the window? Like, does defense not matter to anybody? I mean, because
I mean, if
it matters in the game. I
this
mean,
didn't matter, Ozzie Smith would have never been a Hall of Famer because his
exactly.
offense
So
was
I don't.
trash.
Yeah, I don't understand. Again, I don't understand these writers. He should be in the Hall of Fame. It should not take this long to get him in the Hall of Fame. It's just such a disservice to the people. I mean, what would have happened if, he gets eligibility for the first 5 years he doesn't get in? What happens year 6 he dies? I mean, like, are you just going to take that honor and experience away from him? Like, nothing has changed post career. So again, I just don't understand the inconsistencies in these writers' minds. It just doesn't make sense to me. It's very frustrating because I've thought about that. Like, what if Billy Wagner were to have died like last year, and then MLB, like, the writers just took that opportunity away from him, that life experience away from him? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, and the thing is we have so much access now to all of this data, especially new era statistics, that there's really no excuse. You can look at every metric that you want to look at, and a lot of these guys are either Hall of Fame worthy or they're not. And once again, this was something with Andrew. What did Andrew do extremely well? That's what we talked about earlier with Ichiro. Well, Andrew, first of all, is the greatest defensive center fielder of all time. Ding, there's one. Okay. He also hit 434 homers playing center field. Okay. That's 2. You at least have 2 things right there that you did extremely well. You hit for power. You played elite defense. Actually, you played defense in a league of your own, not even elite. And then also, too, Andrew stole some bases throughout his career. He wasn't slow. He wasn't a liability. He had an 823 OPS. I mean, he had 1,289 RBI, so he was driving guys in, once again, while playing center field. If you have ever played center field on a diamond, you know how difficult it is to play center field. You are constantly moving, you're working on every play, and it will beat you. It will literally beat you to death until they move you to left or right field. That's why Mike Trout hasn't played that often, is because he refuses to move off center field and play right or left like he should, and that's why he can never stay healthy. If Mike Trout would have made that move 4 or 5 years ago, we probably would have seen a healthy Mike Trout. But when you refuse to move off that position, don't plan on staying healthy. That's why most guys don't play their whole career there, unless you're Willie Mays, who was obviously generational. Nathan, what are your thoughts about Andrew Jones?
Yeah, I think you guys have hit the point on most of this, but I'm gonna use another similar comparison that I used earlier. This guy looks awfully a lot like Beltran and Andre Dawson. I mean, obviously he's better than Dawson on the field, no doubt. Like, we're putting this guy in center field to play defense, no questions asked. And really, he's right there with the home runs. Granted, Dawson has 900 more hits than him in his career, but if you're looking for a guy with power and is going to suck every ball out of the air in the outfield, there's only a handful of guys on this list that are going to do it. It's Andrew Jones, it's Willie Mays, and maybe in like 10 years, Mike Trout. But that's a different discussion. It's ludicrous that this guy's not in here. If we're putting Beltran in, how are we not letting this guy in? It's ridiculous.
Okay. Next guy I have on my list, and this is actually going to round out my ballot because I only have 6 guys on my ballot. Next guy that had a very high peak, but once again a very short career overall, and doesn't really have the counting stats, but the advanced metrics. Love this guy, and that's Chase Utley. Chase Utley was a Braves killer. He played second base for the Phillies, and let me just share some stats with you. Okay, first of all, he has a higher 7-WAR peak than Roberto Alomar and Craig Biggio. Okay, both of which in the Hall of Fame. He's got the 15th most B WAR amongst second basemen with 64.5. Okay. If you look at top 15, that's a great list. Okay. And the last thing that I want to share about Chase Utley is this. He has 5 seasons with a B WAR over 7.3. For those of you who have any inclination or any idea what B WAR is, 8 is MVP level. Okay? How many seasons over 7.3 does Jose Altuve have right now, Joe? 1, maybe 2? Because it
He's
ain't
got, I
5.
believe, 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
My point being is that Chase Utley played at an MVP level as a second baseman for 5 seasons. There's not many second basemen that have ever done that. Now, granted, once again, the peak was very high, but it was very short. Chase Utley only had 259 home runs with 1,885 hits to go along with it. He had just over 1,000 RBIs, but he had a career OPS of 823, OPS plus of 117, and stole 154 bases. If you're looking at what this guy did well or great, like I've kind of been talking about, first of all, he was probably just one of the best well-rounded players, at during his time. He hit for power as a second baseman. He had a pretty good average at 275. He got on base at a great clip. He played exceptional defense. Defensive WAR loves him. That's another reason his B WAR overall sits at a 64.5. There's a this is what irritates me about the voters from 2008 and 2009 is that in 2008 he had a 9 B WAR and was 14th in MVP voting.
I was just looking at that.
He had an 8.2 B WAR in 2009 and was 8th in MVP voting. If you could go and redo all of those 7.3 seasons or better, he's probably got at least one MVP and maybe some top 3 finishes. For his career, he has exactly 0 top 3 finishes, which is just a shame because of how great he was. He was just such a well-rounded player that he did everything well. Now, he wasn't the best at everything, but he did all of them well. And to me, that's a Hall of Famer. I think they're gonna have to take a look at him. He only got 28.8% of the vote last year. But if we're talking about guys like Roberto Alomar, Greg Biggio, Jose Altuve, all being Hall of Fame caliber players, how is Chase Utley also not a Hall of Famer? I'm not sure how you come to that conclusion. Let me hear your thoughts, gentlemen.
Nate, you go first. I'm trying to do something real quick.
Yeah, maybe I have a little bit of bias against him. I feel like the Ruben Tejada thing kind of stuck in my head, but I didn't have him on my list. I'll be honest. I think those Phillies runs that they had at the end of the 2000s before 2010. I mean, they're incredible. Yeah, him, Ryan Howard, obviously Doc. It was incredible. But I guess to me, my memory didn't serve as well as him being such a efficient output of offense. Kirby, you did highlight a very interesting point about his WAR and his performance overall, but I didn't have him on my list. So you do bring up a good point. I think they do need to sit down and have a really good look and good thinking about him.
So, I will say, looking at these comparisons, I think they're valid comparisons. It's just, I think the only reason Craig Biggio is in the Hall of Fame is because he had 3,000 hits.
Bingo.
I mean, he didn't get in immediately, and Chase Utley only has 1,885 hits. I mean, that's not Biggio. I mean, people didn't think Biggio was a Hall of Famer. For about I believe it was like 3 or 4 years it took him to get in.
I think it was like 7. like, which is wild.
He didn't get in automatically, and he had 3,000 hits. That almost used to be an automatic qualifier.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just got less counting stats than Biggio. So I don't agree. I don't think that Chase Utley is a Hall of Famer. I was saying earlier in the video that just because Felix Hernandez doesn't have threw a perfect game automatically makes him a Hall of Famer. But 3,000 hits, that is a rare club. I mean, that he does have better career numbers overall, other than Utley. But like, a perfect game is one game. 3,000 hits is over the span of an entire career. That's not just one thing. So I cannot agree with your take that Chase Utley is a Hall of Famer just based off of the fact that he does not have those counting stats in his favor. Now, again, the similarities are very glaring. I cannot, deny that, but 3,000 hits is 3,000 hits, and that is almost on its own recognizable for someone to be in the Hall of Fame.
And I think one thing that really hurts his case more than anything is that a lot of people, especially baseball writers, don't trust the defensive metrics, like with D-WAR and all of those. They don't trust them, and they don't think that they are an acceptable measure for how well guys play defense. So I think overall, I think that's actually going to hurt his case, is because that's how he gained a lot of his B-WAR, is through his defense. So I think that will hurt his case. Really the 5 seasons with the B-WAR above 7.3 is what really kind of pushed me over the edge with him. But once again, the counting stats aren't there for him. I know he's going to come up short, but the peak was extremely high. Gentlemen, that is my whole ballot. I want to hear from you on maybe a guy or two that you had on your ballot that you would like to present. Joe, Nathan, somebody give me somebody to talk about.
Yeah. So, people hate the steroid era, and again, I mentioned this earlier. Steroid era saved baseball's existence. Baseball is riddled with cheating throughout its entirety. I don't know if this is the Astros fan in me talking, but let the steroid guys in. I mean, they were still part of the game. So I got Manny Ramirez, Alex Rodriguez, and Andy Pettitte on my ballot as well. You can put an asterisk next to their name if you want in the hall. Be like, they cheated. I don't care. They still did it. I mean, baseball is still a very hard sport, whether they were cheating or not. I will hold that take. There's a reason why people try to cheat so much in baseball, is because it is the hardest sport that you can play. I mean, hitting a baseball should almost be physically impossible. Science still doesn't understand how we are able to hit a baseball going at 90 plus miles per hour. So to gain any advantage that you can, I'm not going to be mad at it. Unless you're like cheating to lose, then I'll be mad at it. But yeah, I have those guys in just for that fact. I mean, everybody knows about Manny Ramirez, Alex Rodriguez, and Andy Pettitte. They were all, Alex Rodriguez and Andy Pettitte, Yankees legends. Manny Ramirez, Red Sox legend. That pretty much says it all. I'm actually surprised that they're not in the Hall of Fame yet, if I'm being honest, because of that East Coast bias. So,
honestly, I can't say that I disagree, Joe. I'm just personally not one that typically thinks that. I think that the Hall of Fame plays the character clause in the Hall of Fame plays a big part in those. Once again, these are guys from my childhood. Every kid wanted a contract like Alex Rodriguez in the early 2000s. Everybody wanted to make $250 million. Everybody wanted to play shortstop. Everybody wanted to hit 50 homers as a shortstop. Who didn't want to be A-Rod at that time? That dude had everything going for him. And once again, he was somebody that was good at everything. He hit for power. He ran well. He hit for a high average. He played Gold Glove defense. What couldn't A-Rod do? He could do it all. And here's the thing, Joe. Yes, were these guys connected to or used PEDs? Yes. But if you've ever listened to any of their teammates talk about them, whether it's Pettitte, whether it's Manny Ramirez, or whether it's Alex Rodriguez, you know what they say about him? They say that this guy worked like hell to be the best player in the world. Steroids don't teach a work ethic. They don't teach that. Manny Ramirez, if he had an 0 for 4 game with 2 Ks, you know what he did after the game? He took BP for an hour to figure out what happened. Whether you're on steroids or not, You're not getting that work ethic from that. So I mean, it was just one of those things. Like as a little kid, hearing those stories about like Manny Ramirez specifically made me a fan of him. Now, granted, the allegations came out later, which kind of made me lose respect. But it's like I also remember what I learned about them and the work ethic that they put in to be the best at their craft. And also too the fact that Manny Ramirez was not a big dude. He was like 5'10", 5'11", and hit 555 homers. I had mad respect for him. He drove in 140, 150 guys a year doing his job. How do you not like that guy? How is that guy not a Hall of Famer? So Joe, I totally I totally understand the wanting to put them in the Hall of Fame.
You know, who has a plaque in the Hall of Fame that benefited the most out of anybody from the steroid era? Give me a guess. Come on, give me a guess.
Oh gosh, I'm.
It's Bud Selig, former
really?
MLB commissioner. He has a plaque in the Hall of Fame, and
Yes.
he benefited immensely from the steroid era. So I think it's a very contradictory to give him a plaque in the Hall of Fame and continuously screw over these guys who were part of the reason that baseball is still alive in the fashion that it is today. So like I said, let them in the Hall of Fame, put an asterisk next to their name if you want to. I don't care. And we're going to talk about quality clause, or I mean,
Character clause.
like personality clause, character clause. Then I don't think that Chase Utley should be in, just due to the fact that he absolutely, clearly, intentionally broke Ruben Tejada's leg. I mean, that's blatant.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're like a Pete Rose pedophile, he's gonna be mad as hell hearing that from down there. But I don't think that anything should be held against you again, unless you're like a domestic abuser or something like that. Like you could be a piece of crap and still get in for the most part. I mean, other than like physical violence or like pedophilia, I feel like.
Well, that's the thing too. It's like there was always that rumor that went around that Babe Ruth like killed his wife or whatever. So did that really happen? I don't know, but it might have. He was also not a great guy, horrible human being. Not just I don't know how he ever passed the character clause or if that was even a part of it. But when you've got 714 home runs and nobody else has 500, you're getting in. So
yeah,
I don't know. Nathan, what are you thinking about? A-Rod and Manny and Pettit.
Listen, out of those guys, I do have A-Rod on my list. He's kind of in the Bonds category for me. It's like he juiced. So what?
Yep.
You still need skill to hit a fucking baseball.
Yeah.
Like we can't take that away from anyone. I don't care if you took 1 day to recover instead of 3 after you lifted. You still need to know how to hit a damn baseball. Like, look at this guy. He's 4 homers away from 700. Let's be honest. He doesn't get busted for cheating. Doesn't get busted for juicing. He's in the 700 club with the rest of those guys. He's in with glory. He's got 3,000 hits. He's a career hitter, 295 batting average. Like he's sniffing a 300 career batting average. This guy is great. He was great. This is what the Hall of Fame should be. And honestly, for being on the left side of the infield, you could consider him one of the GOATs.
Absolutely.
Even though he cheated, he's had the career to be considered a GOAT.
Yeah,
I mean,
yes.
I would take him over Mike Schmidt any day.
And I'm going to say this too. I really think that the Jeter bias in New York actually cost them a championship or two because there's no reason that Jeter should have been playing shortstop. It should have been A-Rod playing short. It should have been Jeter playing second, and I would have moved Cano to third. Because there's no way in hell that I would, this day and age, have Derek Jeter playing shortstop. He would have played second, and I would have had Cano playing third with that smooth glove. He would have looked like Alex Bregman over there. And I would have had A-Rod playing short where he rightfully belonged, and that's how things would have rolled. And if Jeter wouldn't have liked that, guess what? I would have traded him. That would have been it. But that would have been better for the team to have Jeter off of short because that killed them.
But and I just want to add, like, if A-Rod doesn't pass the character clause, then why does MLB roll him out on MLB Fox every week? I mean,
literally.
it's just
He is the
they
face of
are
the game still.
exactly they are still benefiting from him, and they just refuse to allow him to go in the Hall of Fame. Again, the writers just frustrate me to no end because there is no consistency there. It doesn't make any sense to me. But I will transition. Speaking of Alex Bregman, he still hasn't signed. Are we going to talk about that? I mean, he still hasn't signed. He is desperate at this point. And I'm pretty sure the entire baseball world just doesn't even think that a season should be played, anymore based off of the signings from the last 3 days. Screw the Dodgers, screw MLB for not fixing this problem. The Dodgers should not be allowed to do this. There needs to be a salary cap and a salary floor, to be quite honest, because you do have to get teams like the A's off the bottom, and kind of force them to spend money. But what the Dodgers are doing right now is absolutely absurd. I know that obviously the season should still be played because you could have a team like 2019 Nationals face the 2019 Astros and stuff happens. But they're basically assembling an all-star team over there. It frustrates me. They just signed Tanner Scott and
That would hurt.
Rosei Sasaki. I mean, it's just after signing Blake Snell, Teoscar Hernandez,
Conforto.
Michael Conforto,
extending Tommy Edman. I mean, damn, what else
yeah,
can they do?
Who don't they have right now? I mean, they might as well go sign Alex Bregman. I mean, while they're at it, he's still available. They might as well go sign Bregman.
Actually, what I was thinking, Joe, is that they would trade Muncy for a reliever, some no-name reliever, make him an all-star, and just sign Bregman for like 7 at 190. And then their roster would just be complete. Don't tell me. I mean, don't tell me it couldn't happen, because that's very easily something the Dodgers would do. The thing is the Dodgers opened up a different window of baseball when Hideki Nomo came over and was the first guy basically from that area in Japan to come play for them. And ever since then, it's like, okay, like Japan is just like Dodgers West or Dodgers East, however you want to look at it on the map. And then, last offseason when they signed Ohtani, that just opened up the floodgates. Because what Japanese player right now doesn't want to play with somebody that they view as a god? He is a god in Japan. He is what Yao Ming was. But even better. Look, they got Ohtani last year. They got Yamamoto last year. They got Sasaki this year. If Murakami or whatever his name is, if he drops out of college and just decides I'm just gonna go play independent ball somewhere and I'm just gonna sign with the Dodgers or whatever, once again, they are just Japan West, and there's nothing that MLB can do about it really until the next CBA. Now, when the next CBA comes around, we may be in a lockout again, to be honest, because there's a lot of players that are pissed about what's going on. They don't like the fact that teams spend money. They also hate the fact that the Dodgers spend so much money. If you want to have a floor of 125 million and a ceiling of 300, okay, but I don't think that the players are going to adhere to a ceiling because they also want to get paid, and that caps what they can get paid and their options of where they can play. Why did Corbin Burns take the deal that he took? Because he lives in Phoenix. That's why he took the deal with the D-backs. He went to them and said, hey, I know you're not really interested in me, or maybe you don't really even want to sign me, but like I live here and I just had kids, and this is what I want to do. And guess what? Now he plays for the Diamondbacks. So I don't know. I'm not really sure what a fix is. I have sat and pondered on it because their payroll now is sitting at like $375 million. I don't really know. I don't have a solution. I don't know that there is a real solution. But I don't think the luxury tax is clearly not stopping anyone that wants to spend money.
I mean, and it only is enhanced for them because they have such a lucrative sports, TV contract deal where I mean their rights are just absolutely bringing them, dump trucks of cash. I mean, it's not fair to the other teams that are stuck with like, I mean, since the RSNs completely collapsed, like FanDuel Network or the Bally Sports or however you pronounce it, or like what the Astros had with AT&T. Um, I mean, it's just, and you can't. There's no other teams other than maybe like the Yankees with the Yes Network, but even then, I believe that's an RSN, a regional sports network,
Mhm.
that like no one else is going to be able to get that kind of money, and it's not fair to the other teams that have to play by those rules. And I mean, it's so frustrating because I mean, oh, you're right, Kirby. Like, what is the solution? Because the players aren't going to take a salary cap. I mean, they should, because it's honestly absurd. That I mean, because what's the point in even playing next season? Like, I know that injuries can happen. Like Yamamoto could have Tommy John. Otani could need a third Tommy John, or maybe he's on his
There's
fourth
no
one. No, I think
guarantee
he's on
that
his
Otani
third.
even pitches, to be honest.
I mean, Glass shoulder could fall apart. He's already had like his elbow fall apart. Snell's leg could fall off. I mean, there's a plethora of things that could happen that could absolutely derail the Dodgers season. But they have so much. They've bought so much depth that at this point, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, it really doesn't matter, because if they're not pitching you to death, they're just absolutely crushing the baseball everywhere else. And you know what? I'm gonna say it again because I saw some takes. I don't care about that. I am happy for that, because you know what? If it weren't for that, they would have won more, and they would still have bought the entire league. I don't care. I do not care. I will never care.
You know,
And you know what? Some people might say that we created this because of that, but I choose to block out the haters.
I want to say this, Joe, because in 2021, at the trade deadline, the Dodgers went out and got Trey Turner and Max Scherzer. And everybody was convinced then that that season was over. The Dodgers ended up getting second place in their division by winning like 106 or 107 games. They didn't win their division because of the fluky Giants that year.
That was a
No
crazy
reason they
Giants
should have
team.
won that many games. But the Dodgers rolled into Truist Park in Game 1 of the NLCS, and every single writer picked the Dodgers to win that series over the 88-win Braves. The Braves won the first two games at home on two walk-offs. They went to LA, won 1 out of 3 there, came home with a 3-2 lead, and won Game 6. Baseball still has to be played. The thing with the Dodgers right now is they have so much upside, but they also have so much injury risk. I don't know one guy on the Dodgers right now, besides maybe Snell, that's actually going to be able to give them 150 healthy innings. Because it's never been Glass now. It hasn't been Sasaki. Yamamoto, we don't know what kind of shape he's in. We don't know what Otani's going to look like. Because he, once again, this is another unicorn thing for him. He had the internal brace done. We don't know how that's going to hold up. There's a chance where he's a freaking DH all year again. So there's so much upside, but there's also so much injury risk. Not to mention, all of their stars that play a position, besides Otani and Smith, are all over the age of 32. Well, what happens after the age of 32? Everything goes down. You know what happens after age 34? Most guys lose their legs and they don't hit for power anymore. That's what happened to Joey Votto. So you're looking at Betts and Freeman. Betts is 32. Freeman is 34. Teoscar is 32. Michael Conforto is a walking injury. Tommy Edmonds is a super utility guy. How is Hyesung Kim going to do? Is he actually going to be able to hit here? Is he going to be able to play second base here? Max Muncy at some point is just not going to be a good baseball player anymore. I don't know how this guy is still a good baseball player. Will Smith and Ohtani at the plate look to be their only real consistent guys for the future. How is Freeman going to be next year? Is he going to hit 50 doubles and 15 homers? How is Betts going to look having to play shortstop every day? There's so much upside, but there's so much injury risk that don't be surprised if they're shopping for depth in the starting pitching department at the trade deadline. It could very easily happen. Like, until I see all 6 or 5 of them make it through spring training without getting hurt, I ain't sold on it, you know? I can't be. I've seen it happen a lot, you know, with, this team has this so many, they've got so many good starters. Well, can we make it through spring training first? Because you know what always happens in the spring? Somebody blows something. Like, it happens every single year, you know? I don't know. What are your thoughts, Nathan?
Man, I think it's the truth. You do bring up a good point. They freaking signed. It seemed like they signed the biggest people in 2021, and look where they ended up. I mean, even the last couple of years, their team has been loaded, and finally they make it to the World Series. They're on the stage, and they're playing like the backloaded Yankees, man, where they only have like 2, 3, 4 hitters that can actually decently hit the ball. Like, you want to talk about Mickey Mouse, huh? But
Yeah.
I agree. I agree there. They've signed the whole league up, and they've sat there and still not performed. And yeah, now they're in a spot where all the people that they signed up 5, 6 years ago are getting old. So who knows?
And I just want to say this too, guys. Notice that a lot of their deals that they've had this offseason, you know what they include? Signing bonuses. You know how they're paying these guys these signing bonuses? Because I heard the other day that they made $120 million off Shohei. $120 million off Shohei. That's 2.5 times or 3 times what he was bringing in with the Angels. So
Yeah,
it's just, of course they can pay these signing bonuses because, you've got a generational talent from Japan where every person in the country bought a jersey. You know, I mean, it's just 120 million. Even if it's only 75 million, you just paid for like 4 bonuses, and you're not even in the red
Yeah.
yet. That I know I know that he's got $68 million deferred a year for 10 years after that, but my God, by that time he's going to have a kid that will be drafted by the Dodgers or signed by the Dodgers out of Japan. So they're just going to continue this Ohtani legacy. So it's wild to me. It is. They opened up the market with getting Ohtani, and now every guy in Japan, guaranteed, wants to be a Dodger.
Yeah, like I said, I get it. Like, I get that the season still has to be played because, you do have those teams like the Braves in 2021 or the Nationals in 2019 that just come out of nowhere and shock the world, even against, one of the best offenses in Major League Baseball history and that 2019 Astros team. And, I get it. That's why you play the game, but it's still like, it's just so tiring. It's so tiring because it just feels like all of the talent pool is in just one, centralized location, and it's not spread out across the league like you really want it to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to watch Major League Baseball right now when there's like 10 elite teams, but there's also 10 teams at the bottom that probably would lose a game or two against Vanderbilt. I mean, it's wild to me looking at some of that stuff because like last year, who's to say that the Rockies beat, I don't know, just pick a random D1 university in the SEC, because they absolutely sucked. Look at the White Sox last year. Should any of them be big leaguers? No, none of them should be big leaguers except Crochet. They're not even going to have that guy anymore. They traded him.
Robert.
Yeah, I was going to say Luis Robert.
Luis Robert's not even good anymore. He was a below average player last year.
He was hurt for a bunch of the year, man.
Bro, I don't want anything to do with Luis Robert. They want a haul for him to be an average player who's a walking injury. Get out. Crochet, you can get a haul for Crochet. Not Robert. Come on, that's stupid. But who's to say that, like, there's so many guys on the White Sox that really shouldn't even been playing in the big leagues. They should let every guy that's a top prospect next year have a chance in spring and just let them work through the kinks. Because Kyle Teal should probably be the starting catcher. Who was the other guy they sent from Boston?
Brandon Montgomery.
Braden Montgomery. Let him start in Double-A and work his way up by June. I mean, come on. What are we doing, Chicago? I need the South Side to really get it together and bring some of these young guys up and just let them play. Because
you think the White Sox have a problem? You should see the entire South Side. Then you'll really understand.
Yeah, exactly.
You'll really understand.
Yeah.
You should look at the Bulls. Then you'll really understand.
Oh, yeah.
It starts at the top,
Yeah.
Kirby.
Oh, man. Okay. Joey, are you done talking about the Dodgers?
Yeah, I'm done talking about anything now.
Well, because really, it's really our teams have done nothing since.
Fuck.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know what's crazy is I sent you guys today that deal about Verlander and Scott, how apparently they had deals in place with the Braves, and they both got outbid by either the Dodgers or the Giants. I'm sure that Verlander's deal was probably 1 at 12. The Giants came with 1 at 15. I'm sure the Scott deal was 4 at 60 or 4 at 64, and the Dodgers hit him with 4 at 72. And that's just what happens. I mean, if you're a reliever, you got one chance to make a bag, and that's it. And in 4 years, Tanner Scott his career probably be over. That's all there is to it. It may be sooner than that if he blows out. So sucks that they got neither one of those guys, but I'm sure that there'll be a pivot somewhere between now and spring training, but it is looking very grim right now as far as the offseason goes. Anyway, thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you for listening to our Hall of Fame ballots and our little Dodgers rant. We really appreciate it. If you have not already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are steadily watching our views continue to go up, even in the off season, which I myself and Joe and Nathan, we all thoroughly appreciate that. Then also too, if you don't really want to watch or see our faces on the screen, you can listen to us on Apple Podcast. We're a great listen. I can promise you that. We're very entertaining, or at least we like to think that. So thank you everybody, and have a great night.